What's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday morning. I know a lot of you are going out and playing golf this weekend, so I thought I would share a little tip here that will help you stay on track. And this is something you've heard me say quite a few times before, but it's worth reminding because it's one thing to understand it in theory, it's another thing to apply it in practice. And that's to have an intention behind every single shot. My favorite story is of Lee Trevino, who grew up as a poor guy, and he grew up caddying on the golf course, and somebody gave him a golf club, and he didn't have much time to practice, but when he did, and by practice I mean he would just find a couple minutes here or there throughout the day to hit a ball, right? Because that wasn't his main job. He was a caddy, he was helping out, things like that. But so the story goes at least, when he was hitting balls, every single shot that he hit, he had in the back of his mind that, hey, this is for my mom, for giving me such a good life and presenting me with opportunities. This shot is to, better myself and better my life. This shot is to give back to those who have helped me, right? So every single shot that he hit, because he didn't have an opportunity to hit a lot, was very focused. It had a very powerful intention behind it, and he was playing for something much greater than himself. Same thing with Byron Nelson. Byron Nelson never wanted to be a golf pro. He wanted to be a rancher, and he figured that being good at golf could get him the money he needed to buy his ranch. And the story goes that when he won his several tournaments in a row, he, the first one bought the farm, the next one bought the house, the next one bought the tractors, the next one bought the animals, whatever it was. And he played as a means of getting to that result. He had a very focused intention behind everything. Now, where we're coming full circle here is it's very easy to get lost in the rut of practicing and playing and just going through the motions. And even if you're working on the right things, even if we've talked about, hey, this is the area of your game that needs the most work, for example, putting or a short game or your full swing, and we look at the stats, we look at the data, we say this is what's costing you the most strokes, this is where you have the most to gain. Even if you know that, and even if you're working on the right things in the right way, if you don't have the intention behind every shot, you're not getting the most out of it. And I say this all the time, and I'm going to reinforce it going into this weekend, but I think you get more out of hitting 10 to 20 balls with really good focus and intention behind every shot, as opposed to hitting an entire bucket just kind of swinging just to swing. And what happens is there's a massive flip in the way we think about a shot. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. One of them is that the swing you make will determine the shot you hit. And a lot of players will go out onto the course and they will say, look, I only have one shot. Everything goes from left to right. I hit a high fade. So I'm just going to take what I have to work with, and I'm just going to, apply it to the shot that's in front of me. And don't get me wrong, that is the thing to do when you're first starting out and you only have one shot. But as you progress as a golfer and you develop more skills, maybe you then have two shots. You have the high fade and maybe you have a low fade. And now it's a little bit deeper of a question. It's no longer which swing do I want to make to hit that shot. It's which of those shots is going to be better for the situation I'm in, and let that determine the swing that you make. Now, where this comes into practice is if you're around, say, the short game area, and you got a wedge in your hand, and the beautiful thing about short game is there is no one right answer. You can go all sorts of different ways with it because it's a very creative part of the game. It doesn't matter how you do it, you're just trying to get the ball as close to the hole as possible and get it in the hole in as few shots as possible. So any number of shots could be pulled off. You could hit the high shot, you could hit the low shot, you could hit something in between. You could take a 60 degree and flop it. You could take a pitching wedge and bump and run it. It really comes down to a few things, one of them being your confidence over your ability and being able to fake it until you make it. Even if you don't pull the shot off, you still need to commit to it. But the other side of it is being open and receptive to the situation that's in front of you. And sometimes the shot is going to tell you what it needs to be. And that typically increases in its exponential increases as the conditions become tougher. What I mean by that is if you have a course that's relatively flat and slow, you can get away with a lot. You can do a lot of things that, on a firm, fast, difficult course you can't do, right? This is why if we watch players on TV on the tours, a lot of times they're presented with a shot that, we might look at and be like, oh, if that were me, I'd just hit it this way. But they're hitting these, super high flop shots from like 5 yards off the green. And it's because that's the only shot that they can hit to have a reasonable chance of getting close. And it's not that it's the only shot. They could hit other shots, but they're not going to get anywhere near as close. And it has to do with the conditions of the course. Maybe they short-sided themselves, the green runs away, there's no spin on the ball because it's coming out of the rough, so they need the height. But my point is, they know that that's the shot because they've looked at the situation, they've looked at the conditions in front of them, and they've said, look, this is what I need to do. And then they really download that shot. They visualize it. They think about it. They feel it before they even make their practice swing. And they ask themselves questions like, how far away is it? And, okay, what's in between me and where I'm going? What's the conditions of the lie? Where do I want to land it? Which club do I want to use to make this happen? And then they start practice swinging. They start to feel that shot until they hit it. So they're going about it the opposite way that most amateurs do. And this is where the real big key I want to drive home comes in, is that they have an intention behind the shot. And a lot of amateurs do not. So when you're practicing, when you're playing, it's not just, okay, let me make this swing so I can get that result, and then I'll just copy and paste that result onto the situation. Yes, that will get you by in the beginning stages as you're developing your skills. But that's not going to ultimately take you to that next level. The next level is, what's the shot I need to hit here based on the conditions, based on the situation? And then let me be okay with trying that shot and failing again, and failing again, and failing again. And that's okay, because golf is a game of who can miss the best. We're always going to miss shots. Even Tiger Woods says, look, if I hit 1 or 2 perfect shots in the span of a tournament, I'm having a pretty good week. If I hit more than that, is usually when I win by a big margin. And that's one of the greatest players that's ever played the game. And he's saying, look, every shot is a miss. Now, when you go into a shot with intention, you say, okay, this is going to be a high shot with my 60-degree laid open. I'm going to land it on that spot, blah, blah, blah. You go through your whole pre-shot routine and you stay focused on it. Then when you hit it, you get to learn from it. And there is no failure. Either you learn, yes, what I did was correct. Let me make a mental note, maybe get in my journal and write down what worked for me. What was I thinking about? How was I set up? How did I build my stance? But if it doesn't work, you can learn from it. And when you're learning from it, you can say, okay, well, what did go well? What worked in my favor? And then what didn't? And then you change one tiny little variable and you try it again. And even then, you don't necessarily need to change any variables, because it could be that you built your stance correctly, you picked the right shot, all these things, and you just didn't execute. Okay, so the execution part of it in its own right just takes time. It takes reps. It takes developing that skill, and it's this balance back and forth. Now, what I want all of you watching this to do, next time you go out to practice, next time you go out to play, and especially when you go out to play, if this is a round that you're playing that's not a competitive round, what I want you to do is score yourself, but not based on how many strokes it took you to finish the round, but instead, did you fully commit to your pre-shot routine and commit to the shot that you had in your mind? If you're able to follow through on the process that you set out for yourself, then that was a good shot. If you, in the back of your mind during that swing, had doubts and you change your mind and you kind of stumble a little bit and you're questioning it, that was not a good shot. So I don't care if it takes you 60 shots to finish your round or 160 shots to finish your round. What we really want to know is how many of those shots did you fully commit and have an intention and follow through on your process. Because when you do that, That is when you get the result of score. We have to take score out of the equation and just look at the metrics along the way that lead to that score. We know that if you want to break 100, you can't have any penalty strokes or hit balls out of bounds. You need to hit your green in regulation and +1 every time, and you need to 3-putt half the time and 2-putt half the time. You do that, and you will break 100. The same stats apply for 90 and 80 and 70. They just refine a little bit. But the point is, for example, if you're trying to break 100, we know what those stats are. For example, we can only 3-putt half the time. We have to 2-putt the other half of the time, assuming that you've hit every green in regulation and +1. So you can keep track of that, and you can just look at your putting. Did I commit to every putt? No. Oh, okay, I did. That one, I got a little lazy. It was a 50-footer. I just kind of smacked it up there, and I left myself 12 feet, and it just wasn't close enough, and I had too many 3-putts, and this, that, and the other. So it's focusing on the intention and the routine behind each shot within the little category of skill that you're trying to develop for the score that you're trying to achieve. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to stick to it every single time, and that repetition, that intention, that focus, that's what's ultimately going to get you better. And you look at the best players in the world on any of the tours or in any sport for that matter, and they all have a little pre-shot routine. Golf, we talk about pre-shot routine all the time, but even basketball at the free throw line, if there's a penalty and they're throwing a free throw, I guarantee it, they're doing the same thing every single time. They have a routine. Baseball, same thing. They get up to the plate, they may spit in their gloves, rub, twist, shuffle, shuffle. Like, it's always the same thing. Every single sport, that routine, because when you're doing the exact same thing, or at least very, very similar as best you can, every single time, it frees up this little bit of space for you to analyze and make changes. And that's where golfers have this advantage when they go through what we've been talking about. Is this is already a sport of who can miss the best, and it's already a sport of, fractions and degrees make a huge difference. And if you're doing something different every time, you're screwed, because there's so many variables changing every time that how do you know you did it right? How do you know it wasn't? You don't. You're getting lucky, and you're putting in enough reps that your timing is good, and you're just getting away with it. But when you practice with intention, when you practice like you play, then you can speed up that process, and you can make those micro changes as needed based on the situation that you have in front of you, because you've practiced it and because you're open to what the situation is telling you to do, and you're not afraid to try it and to fail. So that's my words of wisdom this Sunday. I want to know how you do when you go out and play. So leave a comment, send me a message. Let's get out there. Let's go play. Let's play great golf, and let's do it with focus and intention. Let's practice like we play so that we can play like we practice, and let's just work on doing the same thing every single time. And don't forget that when you get lazy, when you're just raking balls and hitting them, you're hurting your game. You have to have an intention behind each shot. Otherwise, you're not going to get better. Anyway, I'll talk to you all later. As always, move better, play better.